Welcome back to those who were here the last study. You know, we're continuing in the study of who is the great whore of Revelation 17, and why do we say that the Vatican of Rome is the great whore of Revelation 17? So we're continuing that study. Welcome back. For those of you that are here, that is what we're studying. We're studying the book of Revelation, and we're in chapter 17. And as part of that, it starts off the major character of chapter 17 of the book of Revelation is this entity that the Bible calls a whore, a great whore. It says, actually, let's look at it, Revelation chapter 17. I know it sounds harsh, but it's not me saying it. It's actually the scriptures that say it. Shabbat Shalom, Junior. It's Revelation chapter 17, verse 1. And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sits upon many waters. So the Bible calls this entity the great whore. Okay, it sounds harsh, and yet, again, I did not make the term up. The Bible says it, and I am trusting what the Bible says. Then again, verse 2, it says, And kings of the earth have committed fornication, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. A whore by nature is a fornicator, right? So a person that's committing fornication is a whore. So anybody that's selling sex as a living, it's called a whore, and by virtue of that, that is fornication, because that person is selling sex to whoever is buying it from them. So that's why this is called a great whore. So we're going to see, why do we say that, spiritually speaking, this is a spiritual situation, and we're saying that the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican City is the whore. So we studied to find out why we say this, and we started in Daniel chapter 2. And we saw in Daniel chapter 2, and again, I'm doing this by the grace of the Most High for two reasons, two classes of people this is for. The first class of people this is for is maybe you haven't studied the whole book of Revelation. We've been doing this study now for a couple of months, starting in chapter 1 and going chapter by chapter till now we're in chapter 17. And so if you haven't started the study of this book with us, and you're just coming in now and you're hearing this, this is going to sound crazy to you. Okay, especially if you're Catholic. This is going to sound crazy to you. So we're going to use the Bible only to break down why we say that, why we believe the Bible is saying that. That's for one group of people that may not have studied this before. Okay, and then there's a second group of people that also understand that the Roman Catholic Church is the great whore, but maybe they don't have all the scriptures. So that if somebody came to you and say, why are you saying this? You can open up the scriptures and say, let me give you the scriptures as to why this is the case. Okay, and that's the thing about everything we're studying. Let me just step back one more step and say this. Our ministry, the Raw Hebrew Remnant Ministry, is a ministry that trusts only in one book, the King James Version of the Bible. It's the only book we trust in. Every doctrine that I believe comes out of this book. Okay, every one. Now, I do utilize on occasion other books of history books and things. And this is the other book I utilize. This book I bought in 1986 in New York City on 41st Street. It's a Strong's exhaustive concordance of the King James Bible. So it has every word in the King James that is written in its original Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic form. It has the Hebrew and Greek alphabet in it, and I look up that also. And so I do utilize this book, but that's more for definition rather than doctrine, right? So, but for doctrine, for teaching, it's only this King James book that I use, and everything that I've taught. And anybody that's watched our Bible studies, can bear witness. I don't use any other book. It's just this book that we use for all doctrines and teachings. Okay, I just want y'all to know that. So if you don't believe in the King James, then you are obviously not going to believe anything we say here. And it might even be a waste of your time to listen to it, right? But if you do believe that the King James is the Bible, is the word of the Creator given to mankind for these last days of this age, of this day and age, well, then you're going to want to know, because everything that I'm bringing you is from this book. So in the first part, just as a quick review, we studied Daniel chapter 2, and I explained to you how in Bible prophecies with the Hebrew prophets, and all the prophets of the Bible are Hebrew Israelite prophets. And so all of these prophets are descendants of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, except prior to that, when you're talking about Noah and the prophets before the flood, which is Adam and Seth and Enoch and Methuselah and Lamech and Noah, and all those in between. Jared, all of those in between, those prophets were before the flood. After the flood, you had Noah as the prophet that survived the flood, and Noah placed a blessing on his son Shem, because through Shem would come the chosen people that will remain faithful to the covenant. Noah was given the covenant. The Father said, I will establish my covenant with you. So Noah was a man of the covenant, and he blessed Shem because through Shem's lineage would become the people that would stay faithful to the covenant, the same covenant. And so it went from Shem, and Shem had a son named Arphaxad. Arphaxad had a great grandson named Eber, from where we get the word Hebrew from. Eber had a descendant named Abram, from where we get Abraham. And then Abram had many children, but the chosen seed of the covenant, his son Yisha'ak, who we call Isaac. Isaac had twin sons. One was called Esau. The other was called Jacob. The son of the covenant was Jacob, as it was told to him. Jacob's name was later changed to Israel, and his children became the nation, or the children of Israel. And as a nation on Mount Sinai, the Most High gave them his covenant also. See? And so they became the nation of the covenant. So this is the lineage of the people of the covenant. And that last people, the Israelites, were going to extend all the way to the establishment of a kingdom that the Father in heaven is going to establish through his only begotten Son, the Messiah, who most people know as Jesus Christ. But we who are the understanding of the Hebrew Israelite people, understand his true name is an Israelite name, Yahawashi. So we address him as Yahawashi, but we might say Jesus Christ for those of you that don't understand Yahawashi. So here we go. We studied and understood that these Hebrew prophets are often shown repeatedly something. So the Father will show the Israelite prophets something, and then he repeats that something again and again. Like we mentioned, the book of Revelation. He showed John 7 churches. He followed that by showing John 7 seals. He followed that by showing John 7 trumpets. And the churches, the seals, and the trumpets are all related, number for number. 1 church, 1 seal, 1 trumpet. 2 church, 2 seal, 2 trumpet. All the way you get to 7 church, 7 seal, 7 trumpet. Okay, they're all related. They're in harmony. There's a rhythm to them. That's not unusual with prophecies. So we went to Daniel and we saw that the Most High showed Daniel 4 kingdoms. And then we used the Bible to identify who the 4 kingdoms were. They were Babylon, ancient Babylon, the Hamitic kingdom under Nebuchadnezzar and his son Evil-Merodach and his grandson, finally, Belshazzar. There were the Medes and the Persians that started off with the Median Empire and ended up with the Persian Empire. There were the Greeks with Alexander the Great beginning. And then finally, the Romans under the family of the Caesars. Okay, so we saw all 4 of those empires. And that's where we take it up now. That's Daniel chapter 2. And then we looked at Daniel chapter 7. And that's where we take up the second phase of the Most High showing Daniel these 4 empires again. But this time he's giving him additional information, important information about these 4 empires, particularly the 4th one, because the 4th one, Rome, would be the last one upon the earth. Also, before we continue, I want to also explain one other thing. Someone might rightly ask, There's been thousands or at least hundreds of empires on planet Earth. Africa has had multiple empires: the Mali Kingdom, the Songhai Kingdom, the Ghanaian Empire of the Ashantis. Many empires have existed in Africa, in the continent that we now call Africa. Many empires have existed in China: the Zhou dynasty, the Ming dynasty. Different types of dynasties have existed over thousands of years in China as well. There's been dynasties like the British Empire that they said the sun never set on the British Empire. There's been French Empire under Napoleon, and it has been many others. Spaniard Empire. There's been Portuguese Empire. There's been Aztec Indian Empire, Mayan Indian Empire. So all of these empires, why is he choosing these four? And we looked in Zechariah chapter 1, and we understood that these four in particular were responsible for the scattering of his chosen people into the four corners of the earth. That these four empires were particularly responsible for the scattering of the Israelite people, the prophesied scattering of the Israelite people into the four corners of the earth. And all of these empires not only controlled themselves, their own nations, they control other peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Okay, just like other empires, but these four are partially or each mostly responsible for the scattering of Yah's chosen people into slavery and captivity. These four. Okay, so that's why they have been chosen by the Most High. And of course, the last one would be the most powerful of all. The most powerful, the most ruthless, the most heartless, the most greedy, the most arrogant of all the empires. And we're going to see that as we study now. So we're now Daniel, who was shown the four. And now Daniel chapter 7, he's going to be shown the four again, this time in much more detail than he was shown in Daniel chapter 2 when he was interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream. He's showing in much more detail. And we studied the first two, but let's review what we studied. I'm going to read from Daniel chapter 7 from verse 1. I'm going to read from verse 1 down to verse 5. Now, we also took note that the events that we are reading about in Daniel chapter 7 and what we will see today in Daniel chapter 8 all took place prior to the events that are described in Daniel chapter 5. I also noted that we should pay attention when this happens because this helps us understand what we're seeing. If you don't recognize the order of the events, it can be confusing to you because especially in the Western culture, we're used to reading from left to right and everything following in an order from left to right. But in Bible prophecy, although it does happen oftentimes like that, it doesn't always happen like that. And we should recognize when it doesn't so that we understand what we're reading. Okay, so here we noted that in Daniel chapter 5, Belshazzar was murdered. Daniel chapter 5. And in Daniel chapter 5, we saw that the Babylonian Empire fell to the Medo-Persian Empire, starting with Cyrus the Persian at age 62. I'm sorry, Cyrus the Mede, at age 60. There were two Cyruses, Cyrus the Mede, and then later on, Cyrus the Persian, who was also prophesied about, but that's another story. So Cyrus the Mede took the kingdom from Babylon at age 62. So we see here in Daniel 7 that this prophecy was given to Daniel in the first year of the kingdom of Belshazzar. In Daniel chapter 8, it begins and it shows us that in the third year of Belshazzar, he received that vision. So both of these events would have obviously taken place prior to when Belshazzar was murdered, which shows us that these visions were shown to Daniel before the events that you see in Daniel chapter 5. Very important that we understand that, because that also takes place in Revelation when we're talking about Revelation 17 and 18 as opposed to Revelation chapter 13 and 14 and 15 and 16. 17 takes place before all of those, and so does 18. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. But in Daniel chapter 7, we saw, beginning at verse 1 and reading down to verse 5, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. And four beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld, till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like unto a bear, and it raised itself up on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. Now, we already talked about, as Daniel was told, and as Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2, that the four metals that he saw were four empires, four kingdoms. So obviously, if the kingdoms are being repeated in Daniel chapter 7, these beasts are also four, and they're also representing four kingdoms and four empires. In fact, the same four that Daniel was shown in Daniel chapter 2. But in case you didn't see that, in Daniel 7, it actually defines itself what the beasts are. And let's take a look. Daniel chapter 7, verse 17. Daniel 7:17. These great beasts, which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. So just in case you didn't know that, it's the same four empires that Daniel was shown in Daniel chapter 2. Is saying now they're being shown as beasts. So from this point on the earth, when you see an earthly beast, you're looking at a kingdom, an empire, a nation. That's what you're looking at. Okay, so when we're talking about Revelation chapter 13 and you see a beast, it's a nation, it's a kingdom, it's a government. The same in Revelation 17. So you'll see beasts. Now, this is not the same as the four beasts that carry Father's throne. That's a heavenly beast. That's different. These are, it says, kings that shall arise out of the earth. The four beasts that carry Father's throne don't arise out of the earth. They are heavenly beasts, right? So don't get it confused. I'm trying to differentiate there, just in case someone asks you, what about the four beasts that are carrying Father's throne? Are they representing nations on the earth? No, they're not. These are in the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary, where the Holy Father is, where the true Holy Father is, that no man can actually look at his face and live. That's those four beasts. That's a whole different thing. Okay. But on the earth, whenever there's a power arising out of the earth, it's called a beast. Okay. Beast is simply a name that is used, and you look it up in the Greek and the Hebrew, it's an animal. That's all it is. It's showing you an animal. Okay, that's what it says. It calls it a beast. Sounds very ferocious. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. It's just called an animal. That's all it is. Okay, the beast is an animal. All right, so there you go. So here we see two of the animals, lion and we see bear. We noted that the lion was and looked like a lion and had eagle's wings, and we noted that that's also a sign of the type of nations that would take Israel into captivity. They would be recognized as having eagle's wings, and Babylon did take Israel into captivity. But we also noted that there's another nation, a nation that exists today, that took Israel into captivity, and they also are represented by eagle's wings. The Bible also mentions them also in prophecy, and the Bible mentions them, in Revelation chapter 13, as we saw, and we'll come back and we will look at that later. Okay, we will look at that later. All right. So yeah, we'll come back to that. I'm just looking for, because Deuteronomy speaks a lot about about that subject in terms of the captivity of the Israelites. Speaks a lot about it, and so yeah, I'm just trying to find that scripture. I can look it up in my Strongs, but if I don't find it real fast, I don't want to spend too much time on it, because we all know who that is. But hold on one moment. Oh, I can't find it now. I have to look it up. I have to look it up, but it's in Deuteronomy. But anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but because we're going to come back to that later. But right now, I want to spend time on who are these four beasts and who this whore is of Revelation chapter 17. So first, it says that it looked like a lion. It had eagle's wings. It was made to stand on his feet as a man. And we saw that the man's heart is desperately wicked. The Bible says man's heart is desperately wicked. It says man's heart is desperately wicked. The book of Jeremiah tells us that. And so this one had a lion at first, but then became a man. That's why it was Nebuchadnezzar at first, who actually ended up becoming a convert to Yah, a convert to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But his grandson was a fool. And his grandson had a big party with holy vessels and ended up being murdered and killed because of that, and his kingdom fell. Okay, that's Daniel chapter 5. So he started off like a lion, but he ended up like a man. Okay, then verse 2. The second one, verse 5, verse 5. The second beast, and behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised itself up on one side and had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. Now we know this is the second kingdom, which is the Medes and the Persians. And we recognize that it raised itself up on one side because it was 2 nations that were sharing power. Okay, Medes and Persians. Persians are what we now call Iran. They still consider themselves Persians. Medes are what we now call Russians. That's Medes. That's where that comes from. The Medes come from Russia. Okay, so they shared power, and as you can see when you look at a map, even the Black Sea is on one side you have Iran, and on the other side you have Russia. Okay, and so they share power at that time. And first the Medes came and took the kingdom, and then following them sharing power but becoming stronger than they were are the Persians. The Persians became richer and far stronger, and the Bible does say that they became richer and far stronger. That's why it raised itself up on one side, because one side was higher than the other side. And Daniel 8 will show us that as well. So now let's go to the third one, which we know to be the Greek Empire. This one is intriguing because of what it looks like. Notice what it says here, Daniel chapter 7 and verse 6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So this is probably the strangest looking of the ones, right? It looks like a leopard. Its body is like a leopard, but it has 4 heads. Imagine a leopard with 4 heads. Not only does it have 4 heads, it also has wings, just like the first one. Although in the first one, the wings were plucked. Wings are not plucked here, but it says it has 4 wings. It has 4 wings, it has 4 heads, and it looks like a leopard. This is representing the Greek Empire. Why does it have 4 heads, you might ask? That would be a good question. Why does it show the Greek Empire with 4 heads? Well, the most famous man, as far as militarily, of the Greek Empire, and the man that actually set up the world empire of the Greeks, was a man called Alexander the Great. He was called Alexander the Great. Why was he called Alexander the Great? Because he started overcoming nations with his army when he was 19 years old. That's a very, so in other words, he was a military genius when he was 19 years old. So you have, people get gifts like that, right? Some people for music, some people for poetry, some people for strategy, right? People get gifts. His was military leadership. So at age 19, he led an army and started overcoming other kingdoms. And that is why, for example, Kemet, who was Mizraim, a Hamitic kingdom who we modernly call Egypt, that name Egypt was given to them by Europeans. And the capital city of the nation that was Kemet, of the Hamites, of Mizraim, was called Kemet. And that name was changed to what you know it as today. It was changed to Alexandria. Notice the word, Alexandria, named after Alexander the Great, because he came there to Kemet and stole his scientists and his they stole all of the philosophies you see from Greeks like Socrates and Paleo and all of them. They stole it from Egypt. That's where they get it from. And then he stole all the treasures of Egypt. He stole all their knowledge, and he took it back with him. They took it back to Greece, and they changed names, and they tried their best to mingle their seed with the Greeks. The Greeks mingled their seed with them. That's why, for example, today, in today's society, you will notice that there's a lot of different facial and pigmentation of color with the modern Egyptians that wasn't there in ancient times. If you look at pictures of ancient Egyptians, they were very dark, like black dark. But in modern times, their shade changed because starting with Alexander, they started mixing. Alexander was trying to mix the seed of the Greeks everywhere. He did it all over the place. And that's why you have what you call from Egypt all through the Middle East, you have lighter skinned people. You have people that are really, sometimes they can trace their origins into Europe, into Germany, into France, into Greece, because it started with those people trying to mingle their seed with all of those people, in that way try to take over. That's how they were trying to take over the earth. And the Bible says they will mingle their seed with the seed of men. That's what they try to do. Okay, that's why you have a lot of fair-skinned people in the Middle East now. At least that's what they show on television. If you go into every one of those countries, if you look deeper, the original peoples and oftentimes are there. You know how you can find them? They're usually enslaved, or they're the poorest ones. They're the most maligned ones in the country. You go to Morocco and you'll see all kinds of Moroccans, and you ask the Moroccans, the poorest Moroccans are the darker ones, the original ones. The poorest Egyptians are in southern Egypt, the darker ones, right? In Saudi Arabia right now, they have slaves. They're from East Africa. They're black. Okay, and that's all over those nations. You go to Israel, they're the worst treated people in Israel are the Ethiopian Jews and the Sephardim, the original ones. Okay, all over the world, because that is prophecy. Deuteronomy chapter 28. Okay, so now you have the same thing here. You have Alexander the Great. He comes and he takes over all of these kingdoms, but then just as his genius started at age 19, he died early also. He died young. He died before he was 32 years old. And he had 4 generals that were following his leadership. These 4 generals ended up dividing his kingdom among themselves, north, south, east, and west. Okay, you had Ptolemy, Cassandra, Seleucus, right? And what was the other one? Seleucus, Cassandra, Ptolemy, and Lysimachus. All of those were his 4 generals. There were 4 Greek generals, and they divided the Greek Empire among themselves, which is why you have 4 heads of the leopard. That's why you have 4 heads. They divided that empire of Alexander the Great among themselves after he died at age 32. They did not leave it to his children. They just killed all his children and took over the empire. Okay, and it ended up with just 2 parts, because north and south ended up taking over all the other ones. So you ended up with Ptolemy in the south and Seleucus in the north. Okay, and we're going to continue with that, because out of Seleucus, the Greek empire of Seleucus, came the next empire, which we'll read about right here, Daniel chapter 7 and verse 7. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 7. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, 4th kingdom, 4th empire. We already know who it is. We already studied it. We studied in Daniel 2. So this is the iron. This is Rome right here. So he's being given more insight into all of these kingdoms, but we're going to pay close attention to Rome. Why? Because we're showing you from the scriptures that the great whore of Revelation 17 is the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church. So we have to pay attention to what it comes from. It's in Rome, right? The seat of the Catholic Church, The seat of the mountain that the Catholic Church sits on, called the Vatican, is in Rome, is it not? It's called the Vatican City. And so here, the fourth beast is Rome. So we want to pay attention to how this develops. Okay, let's go on this journey. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 7. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. Okay, let's look at what we have in these four powers. Okay, are you ready? Let's look at what we have. We have the first one that looks like a lion. The second one that looks like a bear. Pay attention now. The third one that looks like a leopard. And a fourth one that's not described as any particular type of animal. It's called an animal. It has iron teeth, but the distinguishing mark, excuse the French, of that fourth one is that it has 10 horns. Okay, now keep that in mind. And let's quickly look at Revelation chapter 13. Remember the lion, the leopard, the bear, and the 10 horns as we look at Revelation chapter 13. I'm going to read again verse 1 and 2. Revelation 13, 1 and 2. Watch closely now. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Now watch verse 2. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his seat, and great authority. What are we looking at? We're looking at a conglomeration of the 4 powers we saw in Daniel. The first one, Babylon, was a lion. The mouth of this beast is a lion. The second one, Medes and the Persians, was a bear. The feet of this one is a bear. The third one, the Greeks, was a leopard, and the body of this one is a leopard. The fourth one, Rome, had 10 horns, and this one has 10 horns. Where do you get 7 heads from? It's a conglomeration, remember? So let's look at the conglomeration. You got 1 head with Babylon. You got 1 head with the Medes and the Persians, the head of a bear. You have 4 heads with the Greeks. And you have 1 head with 10 horns of Rome. The total number of heads is how many? 7. You have 10 horns and 7 heads. You have animals that make up lion, leopard, and bear. What we're looking at here is a conglomeration of all 4 of those kingdoms. Do you see that? Do you understand that so far? How we got to that point? Okay, so when you're looking at Revelation 13 and Revelation 12 and Revelation 17, you're seeing the same beast. 7 heads and 10 horns. Well, sometimes it doesn't have 10 horns. In Revelation chapter 12, it has 7 heads there. And it says, well, it does have 10 horns. That's right. But the crowns were on the heads. That's the difference here. The crowns were on the heads in chapter 12. But 7 heads, 10 horns in all areas. 12, 13, 17. And you started it with Daniel chapter 7. 7 heads, 10 horns. All of them the same. Okay, I want you to understand that. So what we're looking at in Daniel 7 are 4 kingdoms. What you're looking at in Revelation 12, 13, and 17 is a conglomeration, of coming together of all of those kingdoms to make one giant kingdom of 7 heads, 10 horns, and is controlled by the dragon. Okay, now we understand that part. What about this woman? Okay, before we continue, what does a woman represent in the Bible? A woman represents something in the Bible. Yes, she does. No, and it's a very important thing, actually. Notice, first, let's look at Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5. I'm going to start Ephesians 5 from verse, I'm going to start at verse 23. Actually, start at verse 22 and read down to verse 33. Ephesians 5, 22 to 33 shows you what a woman represents in the Bible. Let's take a look. It says, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto Messiah. For the husband is head of the wife, even as Messiah is the head of his church and the Savior of the body. Therefore, the church is subject unto Messiah, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, even as Messiah also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as Messiah the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Messiah and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband. So the woman is considered the church. Now, I want to make sure we differentiate between what church is in the Bible and what people today consider church. The Bible never talks about a building with steeples and a cross on top being a church. The Bible talks about church as an assembly of people, not just any people. It's an assembly of the called out people, ecclesia. Only one people in the Bible have been called out, that is the nation of Israel. So the woman is a representation of the nation of Israel, which is why you find in Revelation chapter 12 a woman clothed with 12 stars, a crown of 12 stars. That's why you have that, because 12 is the 12 tribes of Israel. So that's the woman, the Israelite woman. Okay. All right. Everybody got that so far? So far, so good. But let me just give you a couple of other witnesses to that effect. Let me give you a couple of other witnesses to that effect. Let's go to Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 16. Is that what I want? Jeremiah 16? I believe I do. Oh, man. Oh, man. Wait a minute. I am so slow sometimes. You'll have to forgive your brother. He's getting old, man. I am getting old up in this piece. And so my elderliness sometimes messing with me, you know. My elderliness sometimes messing with me. Here it is. It's chapter 6 of Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 2. Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 2. Notice what it says. Jeremiah 6 and verse 2. Jeremiah 6, verse 2. I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. Okay, I've likened Zion to a comely and delicate woman. Let me give you another one. Let's see. Isaiah. Let's look at Isaiah. Isaiah has another one here, where he calls her the virgin daughter of Zion. He calls her the virgin daughter of Zion. And this is when, here is Isaiah. Let's see. Oh, man. It's when is when the Assyrian king tried to come at and take over Israel, or really Judah, and the Most High wasn't giving it to them. And he came, and then the Most High spoke through his prophet and said, "The virgin daughter of Zion have laughed thee to scorn." That's what he said. He said, "The virgin daughter of Zion have laughed you to scorn." Man, I can't find it right now. I'm looking. It's funny when I can find it when I'm not looking for it, but when I'm looking for it, I can't find. Oh, here it is, chapter 36. Here it is, Isaiah chapter 36. Okay, Isaiah 36. Here it is, Isaiah 36. Watch this. Watch this. Isaiah chapter 36. Let's see, beginning at. Let's see. Oh, it's actually 37. Watch this. Isaiah 37. Isaiah 37. I'm going to start at verse. Let's see. Here is okay. I'm gonna start at verse 21. Isaiah 37, verse 21. Watch this. Isaiah 30. I like the story. That's why I read it too. Isaiah 37. Isaiah chapter 37, verse 21. And notice what happens here. Then Isaiah, the son of Amos, sent unto Hezekiah, saying, "Thus saith Yahweh, Most High of Israel, whereas thou hast prayed to me against Sennacherib, king of Syria. This is the word which Yahweh has spoken concerning him. The virgin, the daughter of Zion, hath despised thee, and laughed thee to scorn. The daughter of Jerusalem hath shaken her head at thee." I love that. So he's likening Israel and Zion, his people, unto a woman, right? He's likening it to a woman. But this one in Revelation is not Zion. Why? Because this one is the four beasts that are not Zion. Remember, Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome, right? So this one is not the virgin daughter of Zion. It's a woman. It's a spiritual entity. It has a husband. But who is that? So we already know, though, a woman represents a spiritual entity, a church, a nation that's a spiritual entity. It has a husband, okay? Virgin daughter of Zion, her husband is Yah. But this whore is not her husband. Who is she then? She rides a beast. What beast does she ride? The Bible showed us she rides a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. Well, we saw that the 7 heads and 10 horns are a conglomeration of ancient Babylon, ancient Medes and Persians, ancient Greece, and ancient Rome. So this spiritual entity is in control of a modern government that is a combination of all of these ancient governments. Now we're getting warmer, aren't we? We're getting warmer now, aren't we? Yes, we are. So we know that this whore is a spiritual entity. We know that it's not Israel. Well, then, who is she? This spiritual entity. Back to Daniel chapter 7. Back to chapter 7. So we've seen the 4th beast. That's right. Isaiah 47:2. That's correct. I just wanted to read that part because I like how it sounds. I could just picture her saying, "You should know better than that." You see what he said? She's shaking her head at you like, "What are you doing? You should know better than that." I can see her with her hands on her hips, shaking her head. Laughed you to scorn. "What are you doing, Sennacherib? You messing with the wrong people." So that's why I like reading that particular one. But that's why I wanted to use that. So we got a couple of witnesses, though. We got Paul's witness in Ephesians. We got Jeremiah's witness in Jeremiah chapter 6. And we got Isaiah's witness in Isaiah, that we just read, chapter 30, 31, right? So we see the witnesses. Bible says in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. We got 3 witnesses there. So now let's go back to Daniel chapter 7 and read more about this 4th beast that is Rome with the 10 horns. Okay, Daniel, I keep wanting to say Revelation. Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7. Daniel 7. And let's start again at that fourth beast, Rome, the one with iron teeth, Daniel chapter 7, beginning at verse 7. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceeding. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. So the Roman one is diverse. The word diverse means different, unique. It was different from Babylon, Media, Persia, and Greece. This one was different from the other ones. Obviously, it was different in its appearance because it had 10 horns. But there's something more that makes it different. This one that is based in Rome. I want you to understand the Roman Empire is obviously not based in Greece. The Roman Empire is not based in Ireland. It's not based in Moscow. The Roman Empire obviously is based in Rome. Okay? I think we understand that. I think we can agree with that, right? Okay, I'm not being funny either. I'm trying to make sure you understand that because we're trying to tell you that the great whore is the Vatican City of Rome. Okay, but we got to show you this from the scriptures. Okay, so now Daniel chapter 7 and verse 8. Daniel 7 and verse 8. Watch what it says. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Let's examine this a little closely. Out of the fourth beast, which we know to be the Roman Empire, there came a little horn. And already we have been told that the fourth beast is different from all the ones before. And out of this little horn that came up among the 10 horns, this little one came up, and it must have been strong because it came up and it took 3 of them and plucked it up by the roots. Like you get your hair pulled by the roots, that hurts, right? Plucked up 3 by the roots. And it had the eyes of a man, and it had a mouth that spoke very great things. Now, great things doesn't necessarily mean good things. Like Alexander the Great wasn't a good man, right? Yet he's called Alexander the Great because he did great or fantastic things. So this one speaks great things in the same sense, like it speaks things that are fantastical, things that are amazing, things that are blasphemous. Remember, it comes out of ancient Rome. Okay, let's continue. Now, the next verse 9, 10, 11, and 12, and even 13 and 14 have to do with the judgment and with the kingdom of Messiah. Okay, so we're going to skip over that for now because we're not studying that. We're trying to find out why this woman is the whore, right? Why Rome is the whore. So we're not going to talk about the judgment right now. Or we're talking about, we already saw, Daniel showed again also in Daniel 2 that there's going to be a kingdom which shall last forever. And we know that's the kingdom of Messiah. And it says it right here. Let's just read those last 2 verses of that section so we get that. Daniel chapter 7, verse 13 and 14. And I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came to the ancient of came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days. Now, some people get confused. They don't know who the Son of Man is and who the Ancient of Days is. Let me explain. Messiah is the Son of Man. Somebody might say, well, he's also called the Son of God. Why is he the Son of God or the Son of Man? Why is he both? Because Messiah, number one, we must understand, Messiah is not the Father. He has a Father, and he tells you and I to pray to our Father in his name, but he himself is not the Father. When he comes to us to speak to you and me, when he came to the earth, the Bible said he speak on behalf of the Father. I understand. He came as the messenger, the Bible calls him, the messenger of the covenant. He came to speak the Word, who he's called also the Word made flesh. He's Father's Word, which is the covenant, made flesh. So he is not the Father, but he came to speak on behalf of the Father. In that regard, he's the Son of God. Do you understand? He's the Son of God because he speaks to us on behalf of the Father. When he is representing you and me as the high priest, which he does for his chosen people, he represents us to the Father so that he speaks on our behalf. And he says, I am speaking on behalf of that sister, of that brother who trusts in you through my name, Father. He is the Son of Man because he's representing man. Do you understand? So when he's talking to the Father on our behalf, he's representing man. He's the Son of Man. When he's talking to us, giving us the Father's message, he's speaking for the Father. He is the Son of God, the Son of Yah. You'll catch that? It's not complicated, is it? People make it complicated. The Trinity and all that make it complicated, but it's not. See? So here, he's the Son of Man, which tells you what? He's representing his people on the earth as he comes to the Father, Son of Man. The Father, obviously, then, is the Ancient of Days, which makes sense. He has no beginning and no end. That is the Father. He has no beginning and no end. There's no beginning of the Father, and there's no end. I know it's hard for people to understand that because we live in a finite society, but Father is infinite. He's infinite. There's no beginning and no ending with him. So the Son of Man is representing us and coming to the Ancient of Days. Okay? They brought him near before him. Verse 14. And there was given him dominion, given to who? The Son of Man, dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people and nations and languages, that is the earthly people, nations, and languages are on the earth. So he's saying, I'm giving you, my son, Son of Man, a kingdom that represents all of the saved people of man, of all peoples and nations and kingdoms and tongues. I'm giving you this kingdom. Father saying to the Son of Man, his only begotten. Okay? His dominion, verse 14, is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, which again is basically a repetition of what Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 2 of Daniel. This kingdom will never be left to other people. It's going to last forever. And that's to say the same thing here. It's Messiah's kingdom given to him from the Father. It is the whole earth is Messiah's kingdom. That's why he is called King of Kings and Lord of Lords. There's going to be other kings on the earth. David's going to be king in Jerusalem. The Bible tells us that. But above David is the King of Kings, Messiah. And that was given him from his Father as the Son of Man. Okay? Daniel now. So now, Daniel chapter 7, verse 15. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I mean, this is blowing him away. He's seeing Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome. None of them are Israel. He's seeing this little horn come up and take power out of Rome. That's not Israel either. So he's grieved. Daniel is an Israelite, presently at that particular time in captivity. Promised through the prophecy of Jeremiah that after 70 years, their captivity would end. And he's wondering where his people are in all this. Watch here from verse 16, 17, and 18. I came near unto one of them that stood by. Apparently there were angels showing him these things, which we know how Father does it. Father to Messiah, to angels, to the prophet, Revelation 1:1. Okay? I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts, which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. That's what the angel is telling him. And the angel is going to give Daniel a very tremendous assurance right here. Watch. verse 18. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. So now Daniel receives an assurance. He's already been shown Messiah is going to set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And this assurance includes the saints. The saints shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. So now, whatever he's being shown, he can go back and remember this. The saints of the Most High are going to take the kingdom. They're going to be in captivity for a long time. It's going to look bad. A lot of history is going to pass that don't appear to have anything to do with us except us being scattered. But at the end, the saints are going to take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. That's a great assurance, isn't it? So now, Daniel chapter 7, now he wants to know this little horn, okay? And this is where we get the answer to our question, why do we call Rome, the Vatican City, the great whore? Daniel chapter 7, beginning at verse 19. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stomped the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. You want to know about that little horn, that fourth beast. Now, again, I'm reminding you, we know the fourth beast is the Roman Empire. Who is the little horn that rose up, that was different, that was dreadful, that's more stout than the rest of the people? Who was it? Verse 21 gives you a major hint. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. The saints are the Israelite people. At this point in Daniel's an Israelite. He's in captivity. The saints are Israelites. Let me show you the witness for that. Leviticus chapter 25. Leviticus 25. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 55. Okay, notice what it says, Leviticus 25, 55. For unto me the children of Israel are servants. They are my servants, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh, your Most High. So he's telling you who they are. That's the servants of Yah. Okay, all right. So now he's saying this little horn is going to attack Yah's chosen, is going to attack the Israelite people and prevail. He's going to win. He's going to appear to prevail against them. Okay. Verse 22 of Daniel chapter 7. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Verse 23. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom of the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms. It shall devour the whole earth and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns, now it's going to give you even stronger hint in verse 25, but read verse 24 first. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them. And he shall be diverse from the first. He's different from all the leaders of Rome before. And he shall subdue 3 kings. Verse 25. And he shall speak great words against the Most High. He shall wear out the saints of the Most High. And he shall think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and dividing of time. So wait, what are the hints? It's different from all the other rulers before him in Rome. It comes out of Rome. It speaks words against the Most High. How? It says it's going to change times in the laws, change years in the laws. What does that mean? What calendar do we now use? What calendar do we use? What is it called? The calendar that the United States of America uses, from which the whole world follows. What calendar do we use? That's the times, the years. They're based on a calendar, are they not? What is the calendar that we use? What is the calendar? It's called the Gregorian calendar. We are using the Gregorian calendar. Where did that name come from? Gregorian calendar. It came from a pope whose name was Gregory. Pope Gregory. It's a Roman calendar. He shall think to change times. How has he changed the times? Well, he named the months after different Greek and Roman gods. Augustus, Julius. Huh? And not only that, the Hebrew calendar begins now in April. The Hebrew calendar begins in April. Okay? Generally speaking, it's the first new moon in April. Generally. Okay? It's the first new moon in April. Generally, I want to tell y'all something because some brothers are getting this off, and I want to tell you why they're off. Generally, it's the first new moon after the spring equinox. After the spring equinox. Why? What is the equinox? The equinox is one of 2 times in the year, every year, where there's exactly 12 hours of sunlight and 12 hours of darkness. Because after the equinox, equal meaning equal, after the equinox, the days get longer, where there's more sunlight than darkness. So the first new moon, when the days get longer, is now your new year. Does that make sense, y'all? So you need to know when the equinox is, and you need to know when the first new moon after the equinox is. This year, the equinox was on the 16th of March. That's when it was. It was around the 16th or 15th, where you had 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night. So the first new moon after the equinox is around the 14th of April. That's really your beginning of your year. Now, usually it happens earlier than that. Usually happens earlier than that. This year, though, the equinox was earlier than usual. Generally, if you look at a calendar, they'll tell you the spring equinox is sometimes it's the 20th of March or 21st of March. This year, it was earlier, and I'm not going to go into why it was earlier. I could tell you that, but that's another subject. But the beginning of Yah's year is generally in April. That's what I'm saying. Whereas the Pope changed the beginning of the year with the Gregorian calendar. When is the new year for us? It's in the middle of winter, January 1st. Middle of winter, January 1st. He thinks to change times and the law. What law is he talking about? The covenant of Yah. The original 10 commandments is written for the Israelite people. You say, what? It wasn't written for everybody? No, it wasn't written for everybody. You know why? Let me explain what it says. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 1. Yah spake, let me see. And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Commandment number 1, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Think about what I just said. Read about it in Exodus chapter 20, verse 1. I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. Question, did he bring the whole world out of the land of Egypt? Was the whole world brought out of the house of bondage? I mean, who was he talking to when he said that? I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. Who was he talking to? Who was in Egypt in bondage? Israel. So you say, wait, you mean the 10 commandments was given to Israel? Yes, it was. What about the rest of the world? It was given to Israel for Israel to teach the rest of the world. That's the order set forth by the Father. It was given to Israel for Israel to teach the rest of the world. That's why Messiah said, I came not, but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. You say, aren't them teachings for everybody? Yes, as you are taught through his chosen people. When you notice, the Apostle Paul was used to bring the message of the Messiah to the Gentiles. Well, who exactly was the Apostle Paul? He was an Israelite of the seed of Benjamin, of the tribe of Benjamin. He was also mistaken in Acts chapter 21 because of his appearance. He was mistaken for an Egyptian. The Greek man looked at him and said, aren't you that Egyptian that led 400 men who were murderers into the wilderness? And he had to explain to him, no, I'm an Israelite. Oh, because y'all look alike. You understand? See, we've been Christianized and everything has been whitewashed. And so it messes you up as part of the brainwash. But the 10 Commandments were originally given to the Israelite people for them to teach to the world. That's why Paul asked the question in Romans, what advantage hath the Jew? Much in every way, for unto them were given the oracles of Yah. The oracles given for them to teach the Gentiles later. But instead, they sinned against the Most High and were placed in slavery, and the whole world went into darkness, which is now we are awakening to the marvelous light right now. As the awakening comes to the Israelite people, that awakening is extended to the rest of the earth. That's the order given by Yah. So here we are. The Bible says, he shall think to change times in the law. What law? In the first laws of the Catholic Church, when the Catholic Church established Christianity, their laws were like this. You know, first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Second commandment, thou shalt not take the name of the Most High in vain. What are we missing here? Here's the original. First commandment, I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Second commandment, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. Why is that missing from the Catholic one? Well, let me ask you, do they worship statues? Do they have saints? Do you have pictures of a white Jesus with his hand like this and a heart with thorns around it? All of those are graven images. All of those saints they have, in fact, the very institution of the church itself is an image. The Most High never created that. The Most High had a nation. Israel is not a church in terms of what you consider church today. Church means a called out assembly of people, and in their case, it's a nation. That's what it is, because it's a called out nation. Out of Egypt, he says in prophecy, I have called my son. Okay, but we have been brainwashed into thinking of church as a building with steeples and people in it with a cross on the top and a pastor and nice soft pews. And, you know, that's what we think as church. So that, and it has a name, it's usually a 501c3 corporation. And when somebody leaves that corporation, they say you have left the church. And when you're baptized, they say you have joined the church, like you're joining a club. You have joined the church. And oftentimes it's very much like a club. But that's not the Most High. He says, my nation is my church, and my church is scattered to the four corners of the earth through captivity. That's his church. It's scattered. It's not organized into a business of 501c3. It's a scattered people. Greetings, James says, to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. James was the apostle appointed to the Hebrews. As Paul was the apostle appointed to the Gentiles, James and Peter were appointed to the Hebrews. So when you're reading the letter of James and the two letters of Peter, you're reading epistles that were specifically geared to Israelites. as the epistles of the Apostle Paul were specifically geared to Gentiles. You understand? So he thinks to change times and laws. And yes, as brother brought out here just now, whereas with the Most High, the day begins at sunset. That's the day begins, generally 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. And that's interesting because Messiah died for the sins of Israel at 3 o'clock. How do I know he died at 3 o'clock? The Bible says he died in the 9th hour. The Israelite system had two 12-hour shifts. The third hour was 9 a.m. The sixth hour, 9 a.m. of the day. The sixth hour was noon. The third hour was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The 12th hour began a new day at night. The 12th hour of the day began a new night, right? And that's the evening. Then you had the evening do the same thing. 9th hour of the evening, 12th hour of the night, third hour of the night. That's why the Bible says he was walking on the water in the third watch of the night. That's 3 a.m. When then they saw him walking on the water. He died the third hour of the day. That's 3 p.m. And that was the Passover. And then the sun set and it went into the Feast of Unleavened Bread at 6 p.m. That's the Israelite time frame. That's how we do things. That's how Israel did things. Rome said midnight is the new day. The new day starts in the middle of the evening at midnight. That's what Rome says. He thinks to change times and laws. That came out of Rome. He speaks against the Most High. In other words, he thinks he's a God. He thinks he has a religion. Comes out of Rome. A religious power out of Rome. And as the Bible says, it shall devour the whole earth. A religious power out of Rome who reaches the entire planet. What religious power out of Rome is literally worldwide in its reach? You have Catholic churches in communist China. You have Catholic churches in Cuba. You have Catholic churches all over the Americas. Almost all the countries of the Americas are dominated by Catholicism, not including the countries of Eastern Europe, dominated by Catholicism. So much you got the Greek Orthodox Catholic Church, you got the Catholic Church in Russia. It shall devour the whole earth and tread it down and break it in pieces. So now we know the spiritual entity of the last days is the Roman Catholic Church. It is the Roman Vatican. The woman that is represented there, that rides that beast that's a conglomeration of all the nations we studied in Daniel 7, is the Roman Catholic Church. It's the only one that comes out of Rome, that changes times and the laws, that persecutes the children of Israel, the true children of Israel, what you call the black people, the brown people that were placed into slavery. You say, how does she do that? Let me explain. When the Portuguese came and took our people into what we call now Brazil by the millions, they did it with the blessing of the Pope of Rome. When the Spanish came and they went all over the islands, the Caribbean, what we call South America, Central America, Mexico, what they did was at the behest and with the blessing of the Pope of Rome. When the French came, even the French, and they went into West Africa and they went into the island of Hispaniola and divided it into Haiti, they did it with the blessing of the king and of the Pope of Rome. When the English came and they took us into slavery from Jamaica and took us from the English islands of St. Thomas, St. John, Barbados, and brought us to England, they did it with the blessing of the Church of England, which was under the control of Rome, a daughter of Rome. When the United States came and took us to the Atlantic slave trade, into chains, brought us to Jamestown, brought us to Annapolis, Maryland, brought us in chains and had free labor from our backs for 250 years. They did it at the behest of white Jesus, which came from Rome. That's the truth. The Roman Church and its Christianity is the great whore. Let's go back now to Revelation chapter 17. Again, we're going to have to do a third part of this because it took us all of that just to get to the point where we can make you understand who this whore is. We had to use the Bible, see? We had to go through all the Bible. We had to explain every part of the Bible. We had to show you that so that if you've never seen this before, this is fantastic and crazy information, we had to give it to you from the Bible. And if you did know this, if your spirit was already telling you this is the truth, now you got scriptures. So if somebody say, prove this to me from the Bible, there, you got all the scriptures right here. You can't make nobody believe the scriptures, but you can present them. Here's the scriptures. Do what you will. Okay? Here's the scriptures. Okay. Back to Revelation 17. So now we know this whore is the Roman church and she's riding a world government. And again, I want to express to you all, somebody says, you mean we're going to have a world government? No, I don't mean we're going to have a world government. We already have a world government. It's already here. It's not coming. It's here already. And she runs it in secret. That is why you can see the Pope fly around his private jet wearing his fancy white clothes and his fish hat. And every network, ABC, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, they cover him. Wherever he's going, it's front page news. Why is that? Because they control. You say, I thought the Jews, the Ashkenazi, control them networks. Yes, they do. They control them at the behest of Rome. They're the money people for Rome. Why do you think since like probably right before Alan Greenspan, you had Greenspan, you had the next dude, you had this lady Yeltsin, all of them was Ashkenazi running the Federal Reserve. You got all of that. I told you a few weeks ago, do your homework. Look up the religion of the Supreme Court. Look up the religion of the Supreme Court. There's only 9 Supreme Court justices. Okay? 7 of them are Roman Catholic. 2 of them are Ashkenazi Jews. What is the odds that you have a nation with 350 million people and you have hundreds, literally hundreds of different churches in the United States of America, hundreds of different religions, and of all those hundreds of religions and churches on the most powerful court in the United States, which makes it, of course, one of the most powerful courts in the world, you have 9 people, 7 from the same church and 2 from another religion that church controls. What's the odds of it? Of that being like coincidental? I guess that's what I'm saying. What's the odds of that being coincidental? See, y'all getting deceived because you're looking at it as if you're looking at as the TV is telling you there's conservatives and there's liberals. The liberal wing is led by this one. The conservative wing is you're getting deceived. It ain't about that. The Bible is telling you what it's about. The Bible is telling you. It's telling you. It's already here. The leader in the House of Representatives is Nancy Pelosi. What religion? It's Nancy Pelosi. She's a strict Roman Catholic. The leader of the United States Senate is a man named Chuck Schumer from New York. What religion is Chuck Schumer? He practices Judaism. Do you think this is coincidence? The majority of the people in both houses, the House and the Senate, are the combination of Roman Catholic and Judaism. They control about 30% of both houses. You think that's coincidence? They control all of the Supreme Court. You think that's coincidence? The president of the United States, his name is Joe Biden. What religion is Joe Biden? He is a staunch Roman Catholic. You think that's coincidental? Wake up, y'all. The Bible is telling us it's not something that's coming. It's something that's already here. Okay, we're already here. And what's coming is the seal of the 144,000. The winds are being held back until they are sealed so that they can give a message so that the true people of Yah will be delivered from the ugliness that's coming. Thy people shall be delivered, Daniel says, everyone that is found written in the book, so that we can be delivered and stand before the Son of Man. You know, the Bible says that. Notice Mark, Gospel of Mark, chapter 21, I believe it is. Or is it Luke chapter 21? No, it's Luke. I'm sorry, it's Luke chapter 21. Yes, Luke chapter 21. Notice what it says. Luke chapter 21, beginning at verse 33 and going down to verse 36. Luke 21, 33 to 36. Notice what it says. Heaven and earth, the Messiah says, shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. Take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, so that that day come upon you unawares. For as a snare it shall come upon all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch ye therefore and pray always, watch this, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. There's a way of escape, is through the truth. But understanding this, when you stand for the truth on this planet, the whole world, the whole planet is going to be against you. All the powers are me. All the powers of political powers, religious powers, economic powers, all of the powers of this earth is against you. And when I say religious powers, that represents all of your major churches. All of your Christian churches will be against you if you stand for the truth. That's how you know you're standing for the truth. Because if they embrace you, you're embracing a lie. Because the entire planet is based and founded on lies. Every time you hear a newscast, they're lying to you. And preachers stand up in Christian pulpit, they're lying to you. They're always deceiving you. There's always an angle. Why do I say that? This world is run by Satan. And the Bible says he is the prince of the power of this world. And not only that, he is the father of lies. And when they are threatened, they offer things. They offer money. They offer, they did that to Malcolm X, offer him all kinds of things. The government came to him and offered him things. And he said no. So their next move, one of the devil's favorite moves after he been a liar don't work, is he is a murderer. So what happened to Malcolm X? He was murdered. That's what happened next. Okay? This is the earth in which we live, brethren. This great whore is running it. Revelation chapter 17, beginning at verse 1. And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. And the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Again, this is a combination of all the ancient empires of the past combined to make this one world government that we now have. And it's being controlled by this woman. She's riding her. She's controlling it. So everybody's drunk with the wine of her fornication, the wine of her doctrines, the wine of her belief system. What is her belief system? It's very simple. It's man above covenant. What? Yeah, it's man. It's not. See, people say antichrist. Well, that depends on who you think the Christ is. If you think it's that white Jesus from Europe, you can be, I'm antichrist if that's the case, because I'm against the white Jesus from Europe. I don't believe in him. I trust in the Hebrew Messiah of the tribe of Judah. So you can't just say antichrist today, because that's been brainwashed and whitewashed also. So I say anti-covenant, because from the days of Noah, the people of Yah have been the keepers of the covenant that was given to the Israelite people only as the last group of people to have it as a nation, the Israelite people, the covenant. The entities of this world are anti-covenant. What do I mean by that? I already explained to you how the Pope of Rome has changed or sought to change the laws of Yah, made them less important. In today's society, the entities themselves, the churches, are more important, even in churches that claim to keep the Sabbath. Their 501c3 corporation, and anybody that's speaking the truth will say this, are more important to them than the covenant itself. More important than the covenant. They're anti-covenant because the only way for you and I to be brought into harmony with the covenant, how we, who are sinners, brought and admitted sinners, brought into harmony with the covenant. We're brought into the covenant not through anybody's church. There's only one way to be brought into harmony with the covenant. That is through the name of the Messiah to the Father, for the Father to give us his spirit of perfect righteousness. It's the only way. We have to go to Father himself. We can't go to any church, any denomination, any pope, any pastor. It's got to be us going to the Father. And we can only go to the Father through the man that is called the way. Messiah said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes unto the Father but by me. So you cannot get the Holy Spirit of the Father's perfect righteousness that will make you and I whole without going through Messiah Yahushua. Now, y'all call him Jesus Christ. He will answer you if you call him Jesus Christ because you're ignorant and you don't know any better. I was there too. But now when my eyes are open and he has shown me his true name and he's introduced me to my Father, I know how to call upon him. And I'm trying to show y'all that. And I'm not alone. There are other teachers in Israel trying to show y'all the same thing. But aside from that, that's the only way that you can get the spirit of righteousness from the Father, which would cause you to overcome your sin and be a covenant keeper. That's the only way. So the Catholic Church and all the other churches say, you got to go through our church. You got to go through our denomination. And then Romans really set it up when they say all of these denominations worship the same God, and we acknowledge them as worshiping the same God as long as they acknowledge the supremacy of the Pope of Rome, which they all do, including the Ashkenazi Jew. They acknowledge the supremacy of the Pope of Rome. They do. He has a palace in Jerusalem right now. Been there. Okay? He has set up his tabernacles between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. It's already there. Okay? And when they get ready to reestablish the killing of animals in Jerusalem, as far as reestablishing the sacrificial system, which they're trying to do right now, they're going to do it with the blessing of Rome. And it's going to be televised. You're going to see that. Okay? You're going to see that. All right? So it's already here. It's just being held up. The progress of it is being held up until the Israelite servants are sealed, until the awakening is fully taken hold among the remnant people that are covenant keepers. These are anti-covenant. This woman is with the devil. Anti-covenant. It's a lie. It's not truth. Okay? The covenant keepers are always people that are followers of the perfect righteousness of the Father, which are always acknowledging truth. Always. Truth is the most important thing because it's the opposite of the king of this world, the devil, who's the father of lies. Truth is the most important thing. So you can know who's the whore by know who's lying to you. The television is part of the whore. All of these Christian churches are part of the whore. They're all lying. They're lying to you. That's how you know. Pure 100% unvarnished truth comes from the Father. And only individuals that are interested in that will receive it. This whore is running everything in secret. The whole world system is based upon it. Everything. Sports, politics, economics, religion is all based on doctrines of the whore. All. And the main doctrine that we have seen that the devil likes to use is what he told Eve in the garden. If you disobey Yah, you shall not die. She said, we shall not eat of this tree, nor touch it, lest we die. The devil said, you shall not surely die, for God doth know, in the day you eat thereof, you shall be a God, knowing good and evil. That's the second part. Man can become God. All of these world religions are based on these principles. You can disobey the Creator's covenant and still live. And you yourself can be exalted to be a God. That's all the celebrity, all the sports, all the politicians, everybody. That's what you are. That's why when somebody is famous on this earth, what do they call them? What do they call them? A star, a political star, an economic star, a sports star. They call you a star. Okay, something that okay. Okay, we're going to stop here. Again, we're going to need another part to go through the rest of chapter 17, but I think that part that we just went to prove who this whore was very important. So now we can tackle this more aggressively, understanding now who the great whore is and what she's controlling. We can attack the rest of this more aggressively, as we will do by the grace of the Most High, starting next Friday night, which would be the 9th of April. Please pray for us that we be faithful to the Most High through thick and thin. And we will pray for you that you be faithful to the truth of the Most High through thick and thin. May the Most High bless you in your journey of truth and righteousness for his name's sake. May he bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom.